Hi everyone, Christine Harrington here, the Savvy Sales Lady. I'm back. And today we get into the meat and potatoes of the training. This lesson is going to be in two parts because I promised you bite-sized lessons. In the complete lesson 2 of the referral course, you'll learn how to set up the renewal conversation. But before we get started, here are a few mentions. I will be using he and she interchangeably and client and buyer interchangeably. The course focus is on the referral conversation setup. Step 1 is how to set up the conversation. Step 2 is who should you set up the conversation with. Step 3, we go into the most important do's and don'ts. And then the 4th step is positioning yourself the best way. Now remember, on the course itinerary PDF, I mentioned setting up the referral conversation is either neglected or most people don't even know to do it. Well, we're going to deep dive into this today because this is such an important step in order that it becomes a natural next step for the buyer to offer referrals. Now, the last thing you want to hear is, I thought you were too busy to take on any more clients. I actually heard that from a client, which leads me to, what about the prospect? Maybe you were taught that after selling a product to ask the buyer if they know anyone who could benefit from your product or services. Now, what kind of resistance did you get? I bet a lot. Why? Well, just step back for a minute and think this through. You just sold to the buyer, who is now a brand new client. She doesn't feel comfortable giving out referrals at this point. Why? Because she barely knows you, and at this point, she has no idea if you'll deliver on your promises. So she will not risk her business and personal relationships until she feels comfortable with you, your product, and the company you represent. You have to prove your value first. When I was selling insurance, I was taught if the buyer didn't buy my product, to ask immediately for a list of his friends or family who may need what I was selling. That's what I call a needy salesperson. You didn't sell that buyer, so now you're begging for more names. Stop doing that. This is not the way to create trust or provide value. You'll learn a better way, so stay with me. Now, how to set up the conversation. We're going to start by cultivating referrals at the beginning of the sales conversation. Hear me on this. You're not asking for referrals, you're cultivating for referrals. You're just planting the seed that you'll be having a referral conversation when the time is right. And you're planting seeds with new clients, existing clients, former clients, business relationships, and your circle of influence. But here's a mindset tip. Your language and behavior must match. If you don't believe in this process, it will never work and the buyer will see right through you. So if you say one thing and do something different, expect to fail. Both language and behavior must be congruent. So you're going to prepare the buyer by setting the stage early in the sales conversation. You're going to be encouraging to the buyer. You're going to magnify the worth of the referral and magnify the number of referrals expected. We're going to go through each one of these as this lesson unfolds. Loyal clients offer quality referrals that become new loyal clients. Think about that. So step 1 is cultivating referrals at the beginning of the sales conversation, and there's 4 stages of a client relationship. There's new clients, existing clients when services are concluding, and former clients. Now, once your prospect has bought, he is now a new client, right? And there's an onboarding and implementation process that is necessary to make sure there's a smooth transition as the new vendor for the new client. Wouldn't you agree to that? We probably can all agree on this, but I've known salespeople who stop the relationship once the product is sold. It's like they go, check, on to the next sale. You'll never cultivate referrals this way. And we'll talk more about this later in this lesson. Then in your book of business, you have existing clients who, depending on the product you sell, may have bought more products or services. This client has used your product and is satisfied. Next is the existing clients that are concluding business with you. Either the project is finished or they have no immediate need for additional products or services. So there's a transition opportunity that many salespeople miss. Again, we'll talk more about this in the lesson. And then the last is the segment of former clients. If you haven't taken the time to continue the business relationship, you've really missed the boat. You may receive the occasional referral, kind of like every once in a while a blind squirrel finds a nut. Cultivating referrals takes discipline and consistency. The more you work at it, the more you gain, just like anything else in sales. So prepare the buyer early on. Again, this is an important step that most salespeople miss. If you set the stage correctly, then the buyer will offer renewals as a natural part of the business relationship. But remember, prospects and new clients don't know your process. It's your responsibility to tell them your process. Number two, you're going to do this by encouraging the buyer through reassurance. I actually had a new client tell me when I didn't know how to ask for referrals that he was unwilling to give me any because he didn't want my time to be divided between him and new business. So learn from my mistakes. When we get into the script portion of the training, you'll see how asking the right way makes all the difference in the world. Number three, what you don't want the new client to say is, it's okay, just use my name. That's not a referral, that's being a name dropper. And we'll get more into this later in the lesson. Number four, what I mean by magnify the number of referrals you expect is to create a relationship that's more than a one and done. In other words, you want this client to think of you and naturally refer business to you without asking, because your work and service is so good that the client wants to brag about you to his circle of influence. That's what I mean by magnify. So in review, your renewal conversation will flow by. The first stage is after closing the sale. This is the first opportunity for you to prepare the buyer that you will have a referral conversation with her when the time is right. And that is the important part, when the time is right. The second stage is within 6 months of onboarding the new client. The client is now building a relationship with you, feels satisfied with you and your products and your company. This is when you encourage the buyer to think about people she might feel comfortable introducing you to. And you reassure her that taking on more business will not affect your high level of service and commitment to her. And in the third stage, this occurs by magnifying the worth of the referral, like I said, not through being a name dropper, but an actual introduction, if not face-to-face, then through LinkedIn or a Zoom call. And then the fourth stage is to set the expectation that what you want is an ongoing working relationship with the client, even when the client transitions into becoming a former client. This encouragement will lead the client to think long-term with you and provide more possible referrals. So let's dive deeper on ways to prepare the buyer early on. It's worth repeating. Let the new client know that a large part of your business comes from referrals. Now, as you've learned in this course, your initial conversation with the new client should be letting the client know that your business grows from referrals. There's nothing wrong in letting him know that. Number 2 is to let the client know it's common for you to ask for referrals. This is a part of your process that you're explaining what the next steps are. Number 3, get acceptance by asking the client a question. Is this a common way for you to grow your business too? If he's a business owner, chances are you've found a way to help each other. Last but very important, making the client feel comfortable will naturally take place when you live up to your promises and provide excellent service and follow up. This is why it's so important to stay connected to the client after the sale. Even when the client has been passed off to another department or an account manager, make it a point to check in with the client once a quarter. It will pay off if you do this. Well, what about existing clients? This is stage 2. Now, after you've already implemented this plan with new clients, within 6 months or longer, it depends on your product and service, it could be longer or shorter, remind the client of your initial conversation about referrals when you both began working together. Then suggest that the client also consider people outside the organization you can approach. This is when you ask for introductions, not just use my name as a name dropper. If the client is local, invite the client to lunch and ask that he or she invite a couple of people as well for an introduction lunch. If the client is not local, you can easily do this over Zoom. Now, I've even invited people for a virtual coffee for introductions and sent them all Starbucks gift cards that are downloaded right to their Starbucks app. Be creative and have fun with it. So when the existing client is concluding services with you, as I said before, set the expectation that you wish to maintain the relationship. Let the client know you'll be sure to check in periodically. Also, this is an excellent time to ask for a written or video testimonial. Get both, that's what I say. Now, when you're setting the stage with former clients, this is where it gets a little tricky. You gotta be authentic and not perceived as the only reason you stay connected is to milk him for more referrals. As I said earlier, cultivate the relationship all through the business arrangement. And if you've followed the referral process and have periodically asked for referrals, some clients will get in the habit to naturally refer people to you. Now, this won't happen with all clients, but some are happy to send people your way without asking. Don't you experience that in your own world when you have had a good experience with a salesperson? Don't you send people to that salesperson? I bet you do. Thank you for watching Lesson 2, Part 1. Next up is Lesson 2, Part 2, and we're going to go over Steps 2, 3, and 4. Don't miss it. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.